Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to get deeper into internal martial arts, as it is often called. This is advanced martial arts, which is way beyond most martial artists who, quite frankly, are bottom feeder, ignorant, buffoonish jerks, plain and simple. Martial artists know nothing. They don't really know how to fight. And I found that most of them, like most other, quote, military trained people, are a bunch of cowards. Now, regardless of all that, martial arts ultimately, depending on how you want to look at it, unless it's some sort of goofball, silly hobby, is generally practiced for a particular purpose. Which is basically evolved from self-defense. Which, of course, martial arts will never give you because they don't teach you the real world of self-defense. Multi-adversaries, not fighting with your shoes off in a funny outfit. All of these things train you for nothing. As a matter of fact, they put your life in danger. But what is really happening here? What you're doing is, and martial arts can be armed and unarmed as well. You could call learning how to use proper weapons, including guns and so forth, is martial arts. Now, what we're talking about is unarmed martial arts, or using generally non-weapons, which, of course, again, is just plain stupid. So what you are really looking at is being able to defend yourself any place, anywhere. And there are many places where you're not going to necessarily to be able to bring weapons in, but weapons are everywhere. But I'm not going to get into that kind of training anyway. But what you're doing is you're using, in an unarmed manner, is you're using physical energy, your muscles, to strike at and disable or even kill an opponent that is attacking it. So what is the process of that? I'm always amazed at the bottom feeder thinking that the entire world has, whether it's Sean Carroll, the famous physicist who really can't think out of his tiny little box, or whether it's a martial artist or any of these people. They don't really get it. Your average martial artist is just a kicker and a puncher of some boring note. As I said, that's pretty ineffective in general. But what you're doing is you're striking or disabling a person. And what does that boil down to? Let's get to the essence of all this stuff. Really, what is it? So when you do anything, you're dealing with energy. So you are an energy cell. Your entire body is made up of different energies. Now, this is often confused with electromagnetic energy because idiot physicists and other ones can't really think outside the box and think there's something more than the electromagnetic. Matter of fact, there has been books written by these boobous people stating that nothing exists outside of the electromagnetic. I mean, that's how ridiculous your scientists are. But this is the way of the world, and we have to understand that we're always going to be at the lowest level, and we're always going to have to deal with the lowest level people that are controlling. Because the world is made up of people, mostly your neighbors, that keep the filth in power. They support them. They are all part of it. It isn't some nebulous control factor, some robot, some spy agency. Ultimately, all these people are empowered by you and your neighbors. Remember that. And that's why the world is in the problem it is. That's who's out there. So never neglect that. Remember, your greatest threats are always your family, your neighbors, and your extended community. This is who the problems are, and that's who come after you. When they arrested all the Jews in Germany, it was the local police and neighbors that did it, not the federal agencies. Understand that. They also ran the camps as they run the prisons of today. So we have to understand that as the bigger picture. But getting into the energetic factor of things is, why should you possibly deal with physical realities? How big your muscles are, how fast you can move. Well, all of this is based on really energy. So you are energizing your body to do certain things and using your mind as part of that energy factor. And most of it has to do with nerve training, physical training. Well, this is a lot mental. You know, you still have to do a lot of mental work to do that. Ultimately, you have to be dedicated. You have to work out. You have to do the practices, etc. When it comes down to it, if you want to do things physically. But what is physically all about? How does your physical body work? Well, it works on energy. You feed energy to your body. Now, your body is fed food, which turns to energy, which then turns to actions. And now, ultimately, as I've talked about in my Great Path course and so forth, how the world functions on a bigger scale is how it functions on a smaller scale. And that's the creation of energies, occultons, that are interacting with psions to create physical matter and all of the aspects of physical matter. So it can be a movement, etc. Punching somebody, well, that's a physical act. And all this is put together through this chain of events in your particular life. So the whole idea is the act of doing everything must come from these occultons initially, who made everything. They made the universe, they made the physicality of this planet, they made the physical you, and then you break down into your energetic forms after the physical body. So the physical body, which basically is a type of machine which is bioactive. It's a combination of everything. There certainly is some electromagnetism in the human body. How much that really does anything, we're not really sure. We can measure it. But there are other energies that really keep your body going. Your heart is very tiny and really can't handle the pumping action that it has to do unless there are other forces within you making sure all of that happens and creating a higher force. It's a very underpowered machine based on your heart. Your heart really can't do the job very well in general. So there's energies there. So it isn't the pumping of blood only. It isn't some brain electromagnetic functioning alone. There are other energies there. These are generally called scalar energies, or non-electromagnetic energies that form the universe and keep it going. There's a combination, how much of one and how much of there is the other. Well, ultimately, I think that most things are at least 90% scalar energy, and there's 10% the electromagnetic. But you got to remember, your scientists are too stupid to look into that, and they don't really care. They cash their big checks, they sit on their thrones of incompetency and preach their lies to the public, who suck it up like it's candy. So we all need to understand the reality of that. But again, getting back to the essence of something. What's the essence of something? What's the essence of water? Well, water is water. Well, water is not water. Water is H2O, hydrogen and oxygen combined together to make water. It is not water. So the whole idea is water is the combination of those two combined. Without one, you don't have the other. So we need to understand how that works. Now, when we do anything, it boils down to the fact that this is a process of energy. The energy is ultimately created within your body. Now, how do you create that? Well, everything on this planet apparently is a sugar burner. From what I understand, even plants convert photons into sugar that then they eat to grow. So everything is a sugar burning machine, and you can do that in many ways, or it's going to burn whatever substance that is there. In general, things are considered sugar burners, while you can also live off of and burn fat. It's called ketosis, which is very popular now because everybody's so fat, you really can't live off of sugar and carbohydrates because your entire body is made of that and all the foods out there. So you become overwhelmed by it. But the bottom line is you're burning whatever fuel that is. In most cases, as I said, it's sugar. You convert everything in your body to sugar. It doesn't matter what it is. That's what you generally do, unless you are, again, in ketosis, which is pretty rare for most people. So that energy is converted. So we're converting. What do you do with that energy? That powers you. You know, if you people who have low blood sugar, you can't function at all. You're faint. You'll pass out. none of your faculties will work, and that includes your thinking faculties, the way your mind works. So the whole idea is everything is an energy. And what do you want to do with that energy? Well, the simplistic kicker and puncher, even the person in society in general, will do something that converts to physical action. So that would be every task you do. You want to write a book, well, you convert that physical action into a word processor and you write a book or do whatever it is you're doing. This is the crude way of doing it. Ultimately, you would be able to send energy directly into a machine or a process that would create the book for you. And we're not talking about artificial intelligence, which really doesn't even exist. Isn't it's kind of fraudulent and is mediocre at best. But we're talking about creating something from the energy coming out of you. You are filtering that through a device to produce something. Now, the whole idea is, why do any of that? Short circuit the process and go directly using that energy to actually do something directly. Now, of course, if you're producing physical products, you generally are going to have to use some sort of tools to do that. So I hope I'm not losing people here. This is a little complicated. But the bottom line is that all the energies put together then are used in some physical manner to do it. Now, when it comes to martial arts, you are using an energy to create a fist and power through muscles to then affect your opponent, to strike your opponent, whatever you want to do. Now, again, you're using a third party, so to speak. The energy, instead of going directly to the target, is going to your muscles to end that purpose, to get the purpose you're looking for, as you would be using a typewriter to type a book. So you're still using an intermediary. Ideally, you want to get rid of the middleman, particularly if you're affecting something directly. And generally, you're going to have to affect something directly without a middleman. That is something that is energetic in nature. That would be a physical being, energy around plants, etc. Whether you were doing healing or other things, this doesn't require a tool to get the end result, because you're putting energy into something that then will react within that structure and do something. I mean, theoretically, you could put the energy into a typewriter and it would type itself. You would never have to strike the keys to give a clearer explanation of how that would work if you want to use a tool that way. So why bother hitting the keys if your mind can send the energy there and type it on its own? But again, this is something that requires a tool to get a physical end result. Now, in many things, you don't. If you're healing somebody, which is another 100% energetic body, you set energy into energy that takes care of it. Now, this process of affecting a bioentity is also affected by the fact that you can disrupt the energy fields in a person to create higher states of being, healing, or to disrupt them so that they are unable to attack you as you fight them or whatever you want to do with that particular person. Now, that's what internal martial arts are. So you generate energy, and you are nothing more than a conduit. Remember that. You're a conduit. You don't produce anything yourself. You condense, you accumulate. Now, this is another thing that was misunderstood with this whole orgone fad that turned into a Satanist dream created by Carl Wells, who produced demonic energies that people gobbled up. But the bottom line is that orgone is accumulated. It's an orgone accumulator. There's no such thing as a generator. You accumulate it just as with all cheese and so forth. You're accumulating it. And you're accumulating it into your bioenergetic system so that you can then use it at a later date. And you're basically this big accumulation factory. You're a storage place. And of course, that's how, to simplify it all, that's how chi and orgone and everything else work. You're not generating it. There's no such thing as an orgone generator. You're taking the energies that are in the cosmos and you're accumulating them. Very important to understand as well. And you do this as a conduit and as a storage facility. That's how the process works. Now, to get back into something a little more understandable here, there's an interesting series of books that I recently obtained. I just kind of fell into these and saw them in a particular place and said, this sounds interesting to what I am studying right now. And this is there's a trilogy, there's 3 books, the trilogy Warrior of Stillness, Meditative Techniques in the Chinese Martial Arts by a Jan Diepersloot. Qigong of the Center, Essence of Tai Chi Kun. So the whole idea, and there's 3 volumes of this, which are very interesting. And there's a lot of books on internal martial arts, which I've just started to go through out there to see if one's better than the other. And he'd learned this from a particular Chinese master who reached a state of martial art perception and effectiveness that the physicalness of the martial arts were no longer needed. He didn't have to strike you to get effects. We can see in volume 2, it's the methods of awareness in the martial arts. And 3 is the sensory motor integration in the internal martial arts. And this is often called standing meditation. Now, there was a book on this put out there called Empty Force, which probably was the most popular book, which was really a pretty poor book on this kind of energizing yourself by, I believe, Paul Dong, who's a famous Chinese writer. But it didn't really, I haven't read that book in years, but after reading it, it was about, and the same thing like this is standing meditation. And the whole idea is you stand to accumulate huge amounts of chi, but that is really a misnomer because you have to have perfect posture. You have to think in a particular way, and there are movements involved in this as well, quite a few of them, to trigger this energy to go throughout your body and to store huge amounts of it. So it's not just standing there, and of course you have to empty your mind. There's so many things you have to do which make the practice much more difficult. But what was very interesting in these books, what I was looking at and what I was trying to verify after seeing so many videos on YouTube, is the fact of, is any of this real? Now, the problem with what's happened with all these internal martial arts is they've basically been disgraced by one man and then people ignore the rest. And again, you got to remember, I don't care what industry it is. You don't really have anybody in any industry that's doing any of the proper job for that industry. Certainly the scalar radionic industry is filled with Satanist scumbuckets who have never done anything. They keep producing a bunch of junk technology that are nothing more than psychic tuners and have nothing to show for it, even though they're in the business for 30 to 50 years. The martial arts industry, if you can call it that, I'm not sure how big martial arts is. You got to remember the people in martial arts don't really support it. They don't have money. They're very similar to the gym culture, where people who go to the gym all the time don't really have any serious jobs, and all they do is pump iron all day and afford enough money to get a shack somewhere and supplements, which most of them take. And a lot of them travel around from gym to gym with this kind of culture. And you have the same thing with the martial arts culture. These are not a group of people and gym owners in general don't make a lot of money unless you have a very successful gym. And it's the same thing with martial arts. Most martial arts people don't make much money at all. It's difficult to run huge classes, get people to pay every month, and to have a decent income. So it's always has been and always will be a low pay, low intelligence, a group of people that are into physical fitness and into martial arts. That's just the way it is. And it's important to understand that. And there's an awful lot of people that get into these areas because they don't require anything. Martial arts studios, you just have to open the doors. We don't know how qualified any of these people are. They may or may not know what they're doing. And there's a huge percentage of people that run these things that are basically criminal elements, child molesters, etc. It's a perfect place to do it, and stupidly, people turn their kids over thinking that this is some higher path. Well, that's pretty silly. It's also silly to turn your kids over to religious organizations and expect nothing to go on there as well. These are all the problems that you have to be well aware of so you don't subject your family and children to some horrendous treatment, whether it may be as simple as them getting beaten to death, as happened in many dumb joes out there. So, but basically, it's the problem is George Dillman, who is a person who has a very illustrious martial arts career. He's in the Black Belt Hall of Fame. He has taught for many years. He rubbed shoulders with Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris. Now, I don't know how much contact he's had with those people. They don't seem to be mentioned in his book, nor are there anything written in his book from these people. But that would be typical as well, because people don't support each other. But George Dillman, who's been doing this for like 60 years and has a fairly successful dojo business, from what I understand, and has international chapters, and I believe he sells a fair amount of books because everybody's looking for the extreme abilities that he claims that he can give you. George Dillman was tested by National Geographic magazine in one of their photo documentaries, their video documentaries. And I haven't seen the whole documentary, but I don't believe the credibility of any of these documentary people, because I've had contact with them and they're kind of all bozos. But the bottom line is that George Dillman failed to produce a touch knockout, or I should say his second in charge, his number one son, number one missed target. So the whole idea is that he was unable to produce a knockout with a person brought up to effect, which was just some guy the producers brought in there that was known to producers. They also had a dumb bunker there as well, who was watching the proceedings like they know anything. You know, all these deviants that are dumb bunkers is kind of comical. But the whole idea is they had somebody supervising and see if any shenanigans were going on, so to speak. Now, his top instructor couldn't produce the results that he said he could do, and Dillman did not step up and do it himself, which he should have if he could do it. He then went on for 10 or 15 minutes telling you how bogus or how easily you can defeat his practices. I don't even understand this at all. But Dillman, who is in his 80s now and probably will die soon, like two other masters out there have recently died, we'll never know because nobody's ever done a proper test with him. That's not a proper test. You don't try it once. You don't try it with one person. Producers should have came forward and say, well, this didn't work. Can we try someone else? How about you doing it, George, and showing us? As there someone you think you can do this to, pick somebody other than one of your students. But they're not going to do that because they have an agenda, and the agenda of all these movie people is, in their own perverse way, to make you look like a fool so they are special. So, and as I said, I've had personal interactions with several movie crews from the BBC, CNN, and others, and these are nothing but stupid film students that know nothing. So they don't really have any capacities. I guess they use their equipment okay. Well, how hard is it to test the sound level? Well, you look at a little bar jumping up and down to make sure that the sound is high enough. And, of course, you're doing a little bit of focusing if you're using a camera. The rest of it is a bunch of crew of people that I don't even really know what they do other than pick their noses. I believe the crew that came into my house from the BBC, there were at least 8 of them. when there really is only a sound man, a film man, and of course the interviewer. And they like to spend hours and hours with you to trip you up. They spent 12 hours with me to produce 3 minutes of film. And they, of course, the film they picked was not good film. So it was how they wanted to put things together. So the whole idea is that all of this is part of the process that these people do, and you don't get paid a penny for it. So George Adilman did this, and then he said, well, the sky has to be half gray. You got to drink, Perrier water out of your left nostril. You have to jump on one foot, and then you're able to do it. So he disgraced his entire practices and internal martial arts, but he is a nobody. And there are many, many problems with it. Now, this guy, this Jan guy, who trained under Grandmaster Cao Song Fung and spent many years with him. I believe he said it took him 6 or 8 years to master this. Claims that he has experienced all the things that we've seen on other channels of YouTube's of flipping people around, pushing them down without touching them. This is like a Star Trek's force field, where you run into the force field and it knocks you down or pushes you away, etc. Now, I wanted somebody to actually put that in print so I could verify it. We've seen these on YouTube and people flipping around, etc., and it looks very fake. But what is this supposed to look like? If you flip somebody around like a rag doll, well, that doesn't look very real, does it? But how are they supposed to flip around? So these are all the things that we have to keep in mind and understand what is real and not. And since you've never seen any of this stuff, you don't know what you're supposed to experience either. So there's a lot of people talking. There's a lot of shenanigans going on with these Asian practitioners who many times don't want to show their skills unless they're getting paid a lot of money. They're just not going to be your clown to go out and say, show me your power. Many times they won't do that. Martial arts that started to grow after World War II from the GIs that went to Asia were taught all wrong information. The Asians, like everybody else, are very racist, and they don't want to teach Europeans or the whitey man. So this is very common in any tradition. You'll find this in voodoo and witchcraft, and you'll find this everywhere. The Masons, your local trade union, they're not giving out their secrets. They don't tell you how to do something. They're not helping to train you. They're there to make money. So a lot of people just don't understand that. Secrets are not given because you want it. I had this happen with a jerk who was supposed to be an associate of mine, and I was teaching him some things. But he refused to teach me his Indonesian, even give me a few techniques, stating to me that, I bled and struggled in the jungles of Indonesia, and I'm not sharing that. But he expected me to share everything with him. So this is what you get even from the local people. They had no intentions of doing that. Now, how rude is that? Sitting at my dinner table with my family on top of it to take that kind of attitude, the scum that he was. And, of course, he is connected with those same Oregon group of scumbuckets that I've talked about in the past. But this is what you get. Do you expect somebody to open arm guide you everywhere? Do you think it was a fun war in World War II and that they love you now? This is, of course, the absurdity of it, but your government wants you to act like that, so you embrace these criminals who murdered 100 million people. 100 million in Asia, 100 million in Europe, and horribly tortured people to death and delayed wars years and years when they had no chance of ever winning. But they're your buddies now, buy their shit and everything else. This is the kind of insanity. And you're going to take this to the next level. They're somehow going to help you, even as a person as seen as a semi-equal, to do anything. So the point is almost all martial arts that are in practice today are very, very flawed. Now, most of them, as Bruce Lee learned, is you have to make hybrids. You take the best from here and the best from there, and you put it together. But if you use the pure systems that most people learned after World War II, those were wrong systems. They actually gave you wrong moves that would weaken you. So we have to understand that secrets are kept, and there are many, many secrets all the time. Now, you can find some of these secrets in print, and you have to read an awful lot of books and pick and choose here. And you have to be at a level of wisdom that you know what to pick and choose. How do you know what's good in a book or not unless you're highly intuitive, number one, have reached a high level of consciousness, and know your subject matter? Very few people have that, if anyone. So we do have to keep that in mind. So the whole idea is that the system of that this guy said exactly that he experienced what in descriptions of it. He didn't say that it was just like on YouTube, but he said that this is what happened, which was identical to those people flipping around, being thrown in the air, etc. And watching those demonstrations carefully, it seems to me that these people are being thrown around like rag dolls, which would be hard to imitate. I saw one guy get flipped in the sky about 3 feet. It's pretty hard to jump 3 feet, people. Other ones spun around. All of this is difficult to do unless you're a professional acrobat. And even that would be difficult. So we have to be open-minded, but we don't have to be stupid. We're not going to believe nonsense. It has to be demonstrated. And ultimately, with something like this, you have to get a very high-level person who is not corrupt to experience it and then bring back what's happened to him to the general public, or someone you can get behind and believe. Now, I don't know anybody out there that'll do that other than myself, because everybody is corrupt. It's as simple as that. They have an axe to grind. Martial arts people categorically want to condemn this stuff because they're too stupid to do it. Or they want to glorify their semi-gods, which their senseis are, their teachers are. So this becomes a real problem because of the way they set up training of this, quote, respect. Respect is gained over years. I don't know if respect is the proper terminology. You don't want to disrespect someone, but they're not respecting them. They're holding them up as demigods, and this is pretty bad. But throughout the books here, it talks about this, and it talks about the many areas of actual practices you have to do. So it's not just standing there. You have to stand there in a particular way. Posture is very important so you can build up these energies. And it's very, very, in its own way, it is complicated and something you have to do, even though you're just standing there. But ultimately, the master here said, well, why bother hit somebody? Let's go past the physicality of it, as I started this off with, the physical striking, when you can take the energy that creates the physical striking and send that at your opponent and knock him down. That makes sense to me. Now, if it doesn't make sense to you, you're thinking like Sean Carroll and should put your head in the toilet and flush. I haven't finished all these books. But, I can't explain techniques to you in videos anyway. These books will all be made available to the Patreon members and the Inner Order, as is all of our research material is made available to those supporters of this organization, so people can get the information easily as well. But the bottom line is it makes sense. Why go through the physicality of something when actually the energy itself is what you're projecting at somebody? You're just putting it in a cover of a fist. Well, is the fist doing the work? I mean, when you look at Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch, he did not use any padding or anything else. He used energy to push that person back. Now, what was interesting is I believe it was Joe Louis, the famous martial artist, not the boxer, who also did a punch just before him. And the person had to put a pad right on his chest because Joe Louis punched him right in his chest as hard as he could. He knocked the guy back about 3 feet, which is kind of common. Bruce Lee hit him without any padding or anything else and knocked the guy back about 6 feet. This is the difference. And secondly, Bruce Lee didn't have to protect that person from the brute force of that. The force itself did the work. So I'm going to be going over that 1-inch punch. There's a lot of tape on that and speaking about it on another video. But this is exactly how all of this works, with the fact of using the essence of the energy, and you build this up in your body. This is been called Qigong and other things. And there are many other areas of this that I have information on, and even had a little bit of contact with this one master who claims he used Bai Gu, which means you don't have to eat. So you do this chanting and your body energizes itself. There's also Qi Kung that you do very quickly that generates huge amounts of energy within the body and stops your hunger. I'm going to be covering all these things. These are fascinating areas, and we're always looking for extreme empowerments that we can do now. Now, how does this connect with radionics and scalar energies? Well, this is the same energy you put into your unit. If you put this kind of energy into your unit to be broadcast, you would get amazing results. More on that in other videos.